Wow,
Awesome.
thank you.
Just basic questions to start off. When did you first get into improvisation?
Every time I think about that, I get a different answer, but apparently the first answer is 1987. I joined an improv group in New York City called the Back Alley Untouchables. Terrible name. It was the same year the Untouchables came out, which ironically, Del was in, and I had no idea who Del Close was at the time. It was the Back Alley Untouchables. We performed at Jimmy's Comedy Alley, where comedy is right up our alley. It was a basement, and it was used to be a bowling alley, but had been converted by the same owners. So when the comedians would go to their green room, in the green room would be old bowling equipment, and that always made me laugh.
When did you move to Chicago?
I moved to Chicago in 1995. After various different things, I made it here. I moved here specifically to take classes at Improv Olympic and Second City.
Have you heard of Del Close prior to coming here?
My friend and roommate, John Mulhern, at the time was taking classes with Del Close, and he and I would spend hours on the phone discussing his classes. And he mentioned someone by the name of Del Close, and I said, there's a guy named Del Close who writes comic books. Are you sure your guy is this guy? He said, yeah. And we got into a big argument about it because I'm a huge comic book fan, and I remember this little-known comic book. And when eventually I met Del, he said, turns out you were both right.
What was your like students? Sometimes when he was here, they wouldn't get to see him until they got to his level. What was your what was your image of him or your impression of him before you even met him?
I had seen him in passing once or twice, and then it was really nerve-wracking because at the time Improv Olympic had 4 levels. And I took the first one, and it was halfway through the second one, and Sharna said, we'd like you to start taking classes with Del. So I got to skip the second half of the second class and skip the third class and go right into it. I was very, very nervous. I wasn't with my friends anymore. It was pretty daunting, but just jumped right in. I had lots of fun, and I was reading my notes the other day, and on my second day of class, I wrote, this is why I moved to Chicago. Right there in my notes, and it was just that rewarding right there.
So you moved here in '95. When would you say you met Del, and what was your very first impression of him, like your very first day of class?
I liked him a lot. I instantly liked him. I don't know why, because he didn't instantly like me at all. I liked him because he took it so seriously. I think maybe the other classes were having fun, and that's good, trying to make a party atmosphere, because that's what you do in level 1 and 2. It's a lot more fun, but he took it so seriously and told us on the very first day, it's not class. You'll be actors, and I'll be a director, and we'll be experimenting with different things, and we'll see what happens. And I also like that after he talked for a bit, he would say, all right, let's see what trouble we can get into. And that's how he got people on stage. I was like, what a great way to phrase that. I always enjoyed that.
Now, as a teacher, and I mean Del as a teacher, what would you say, like what way did he influence your professional and or personal life?
Boy, both he influenced me amazingly in that, it's weird. It was almost a religious experience in that there was one guy saying things that I had always thought but never said out loud and never knew that anyone else even thought about it. In regards to improv, he said it is an art form, and we just happen to be doing it. We happen to be at this time and place. We need to take advantage of it. And this is a guy who lived through the 60s and 70s doing art, and now in the 90s he wanted to do more, and that always inspired me. I was inspired that he decided to quit his addictions. It wasn't something that was forced on him. He made a conscious decision and effort to change. I've never been addicted to anything, so I don't know how hard it is, but I guess. I always admire that. I think, and this is just my philosophy, people who are addicted to things, sometimes, in a way, it may be a weakness, but to be addicted to something and then decide to quit, how strong does that say you are? And that, to me, was Del. That's how strong he was. Personally, he always liked what I did on stage, because at the time I was doing a lot of science fiction-y and comic booky things, and after class, he and I spoke, and he said, wouldn't it be great if you had people with your level of knowledge and of the genres, and put them all on the same team, and had them do a show, and had them do a comic book? Wouldn't that be interesting? The very first show I ever directed in Chicago was the Superhero Society of America, which was an improvised comic book. And that started me down a long and dangerous path. But ironically, that was first done when Del was teaching me, which was late 95, 96. and it's coming back this year because someone asked me to do it, which was nice.
I actually read that on the IRC.
Is that ridiculous how that happens?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah,
By the way, in just a side note, I'd be more than interested in taking.
I was very lucky in that I just didn't. I had not. Jonathan Pitts had said you should really do it for the Improv Fest, and then I was like, yeah, whatever. But because I have no time to produce, I have no interest in producing that again. But someone said I'm producing a show that's very similar, but we weren't going to do it because we needed a second act, and so this can be the second act.
Sweet. Well, good luck on that, dude.
Thanks. I'm going to reach down here for a second.
What would you,
Sorry.
Directly or indirectly, I don't know how you want to take this question, but what would you say was the most important lesson you took from that?
The audience expects more from you than you actually think, and you have to respect that. You have to respect it and expect it. I think that was the biggest thing he taught me. When he hated something, he told you, but he told you why. And it wasn't just enough for him to say that was terrible and walk out of the room, which he often did, but he only did it after he told you why the first time. And I always admire that. And he always had very good, lucid reasons. To me, long-form improv was always interesting. He made it a passion. He made it less of a hobby and more of a life work, which is weird because in my little improv journal that a lot of people start when they first move here, I have my 5 goals, and I have not met any of these goals because they all changed as soon as I started taking Dell's class. I was like, why would I ever do this? That's all. And I always distinctly remember the first time I spoke to Dell outside of class was at a funeral for one of his friends who was a teacher of mine at Second City. And I thanked him for teaching me, and I said, Dell, this is the first time I can actually feel myself learning. And he said, this is the first time you've had a teacher that knows what the fuck he's talking about. And I always enjoyed that. I was like, and it wasn't bragging. It was, you know, instead of a guy who learned history then decided to teach it, this is a guy who lived improv and decided to teach it.
That's awesome. Do you take any of the way he taught you, do you apply it to your teachings or when you teach class?
Oh, yeah. I'm almost as honest as physically possible. The first 2 classes you try to gauge who can take it and who can't. But I always give them a reason why I don't like something. I always tell them why that is funny, but why it doesn't fit. Things like that. And I also teach by example, which is something Dell did, I felt. Either by personal example or giving them an example of someone they may know or have heard of.
Would you like, outside of theater, were you like close, like not close friends, but were you friends with Dell? Like?
Dell and I had a very weird relationship in that while I was in his class, we were very close to becoming friends. He was overjoyed that I had his comic books, and he did probably one of the nicest things anyone's ever done for me. I brought in issues 1 through 5 of Wasteland's comic book. I believe there were 16 issues, and I brought them in for him to autograph. He said it was okay, and he brought them in, autographed them, and we talked about it. The next week, he came in with issues 1 through 16. Not only had he autographed each one with my name, he annotated each one. Yeah, and it was just, as you can see in this scene, we were trying to go for a Fellini-esque type, and he just, each one, and that just, it was just such a nice thing. I didn't ask him. I would never think of asking. He blew my mind with that. And then when he was moving, when he wrote Wastelands, he was on the DC Comics subscription list. They sent him one of everything. He didn't want all of that. So he gave me it. He gave me literally crates of comic books that I haven't read all of them to this day because some of them are just crappy or hold no interest to me, but they're just fascinating and really cool.
Awesome. Sometime when you have time, maybe you let us like.
Yeah. Awesome. So that was just nice of him to do. Later, when I became head of the training center, he didn't like that. He didn't like it because the training center at the time had grown so large. There were now levels 1 through 5, then Dell, as opposed to even when I started, 1, 2, 3, 4, Dell. And I was another layer of bureaucracy between him and Shauna, and he really did not like that. I was not able to tell him things. I had to tell Shauna and ask her to call Del and tell Del. And that was a strain on he and I getting together. It was a weird time for Improv Olympic, because as Improv Olympic really started taking off, his health started failing. And I felt bad about it. The day he went into the hospital, I had just taught a class and he was coming in, and he was winded coming from the cab into the building. And I got him some water, and then he went from the top of the ramp to the bottom of the ramp and was winded coming down a ramp. And I called Shauna, and she came and he taught his class, God bless him. And I think the class ended early, and Shauna took him to the hospital.
What do you think, personally, what do you think was Del's major contribution to improvisation?
His goal always was to legitimize it. Was that the word? To make it real. Whenever I get mad at Improv Olympic, for a variety of reasons, I think this is the only theater of its kind in the world. There are other improv theaters. This is the only theater that places all its bets, all its cookies, on long-form improvisation. It's the only one. And that, to me, is something special. There are other places that do long-form, but their main stage show is a sketch show, or their main stage show is short-form. The long-form is something they do for themselves, or they do as an afterthought. That's our main show, and that always pleases me. And Del brought that in. He always liked to use jazz metaphors, and his goal was to make improv like jazz. Hip, cool, for a hip, cool audience. And it's on its way. It's getting there. We'll see.
And we all have our very own different public and private Del memorable moments. What would you say was one of your memorable Del moments?
I think the first time the two from class were the one where I was not in the class. He was actually talking to another class. I was not in this one. And he was using me as an example for something. And at the time, there were 3 Asian guys here. Me, Ken Hamada, and Joe Yao. But Joe Yao was out of classes, so I guess it must have been Ken. He said to his class, "That young Asian boy, the one that's not Jason Chin." And everyone went, "Oh, that's Ken." And someone told me that. I was like, yeah, he knows my name, doesn't know Ken's name. I was very pleased. Also, Ken was on the team and all that stuff. So I was just, I was like, he knows my name. Another time was when he had his pets, and one of his favorite freak pets was Melanie. You know that. Melanie, ex-heroin addict, ex-crack addict, ex-cocaine addict. Del met her at her one-woman show where she ate her ex-husband's ashes, her dead husband's ashes, and liked her so much, invited her to classes. And so she would drift in and out of classes, and she took my level with Del, and everyone was scared to do scenes with her because she was just weird. I ended up doing a scene with her that went on. To this day, it's probably one of the longest scenes I've ever done. It's 13 minutes. Just a long, long scene, and I was like, dude, when is this going to end? And it finally ended, and Del, who was sitting behind the bar, just went, "All right, scene." And just started clapping, and everyone in class started clapping, and he came out from behind the bar and came on stage, which Del rarely if ever went on stage, because he turned on the lights, but the lights hurt his eyes, which is a great metaphor, if nothing else. But he actually came on stage and gave a speech to the class about our scene. What these 2 young people have done for you today is something extraordinary. And he just went on this long speech, and that was, I think, the 5th week or the 6th week of an 8-week class, and I just didn't go to any other classes after that, because I was like, I'm just going to fuck it up. I want his last memory of me to be that young guy who's not Ken Hamada did a great scene with Melanie. And I wanted that to be his last memory of me in class.
Nice. Now, there's tons of kids running around now, I shouldn't say kids, but young improvisers who never met him. And I'm sure you've gotten this before, but what would you say to someone who asked you what was Del like? Del
was the heart of improv, and I try to convey that to people. in that he respected it, and if you treated it with respect, he treated you with respect. And it was in that order. You did not get respect for Del for showing up to class. If you showed respect to the art form, respect to the scene, respect for your scene partner in class, that's when he decided to respect you. You did not get free respect from Del. And that always comes first for me personally now, respect for the art form. And that, so I guess the tenets of Del worship will be respect the art, and then respect other people, then you will get respect.
I sort of believe that even with people that you already know, if you hang out with them, let's say if you hang out with Mulhern today, when he leaves, I think you always learn something new about them, even if it's something small. So they always leave some sort of impression on you. What do you think was the last impression Del left on you?
Left on me? Oh, boy. I'll tell you the last thing Del said to me. Jeff Griggs was on a team called Deep Schwa. Jeff Griggs was his assistant for about a year and a half, and a very close companion to Del, which is like a little known fact, which is odd to me in itself. But Del was in the hospital, and this was the night of Del's death party, and I was Jeff's coach, and we had a show at Improv Olympic, and we were leaving the party to go do the show. And we went up to Del and said, we're going to the theater now, Del, to continue your work. And he said, go forth, my faithful students, and do well. And those were his last words to me, which you can't beat those for last words. I was really, I enjoyed that. Yeah.
Now, we all knew that he was sick and that after this party he was going to take off sometime soon, but, like, where were you and what was your first reaction when you first heard Del's not here anymore?
Well, it was odd that whole 10 days, I guess. When he went in, I think it was a Sunday or a Saturday, into the hospital, we were told that he wasn't going to make it to Tuesday. And then Tuesday came and he was still here. He's probably going to not make it to, he's not going to make it through tonight. And then Wednesday night we had the party for him. So he kept surprising us, but the doctors said, yeah. The reason for the party was that Del said, I want to have this party, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. And the doctor said no. And he asked the doctors point blank, do you think I'll make it to Saturday? Let's have a party. So they had the party because they knew he wasn't going to make it through the week. I think someone called me, I think Sharna or maybe Mike Click called me, maybe Frank Janish called me at home to let me know. Partly personal, partly business, in that I had to come and cancel his classes and try to find someone to sub afterwards. So while they were at the hospital with Del, I was here at the theater trying to cope with that. And that was weird, too, because, you know, my grandparents died when I was really young. I had nothing to do with that. I mean, before I was even 8. So Del was the first person I was kind of close to die like that. And it was just weird. And not the first person close to me, the first person I was close enough to be involved with the death proceedings. So that was odd.
Not to get too sappy or anything, but if you had a window of opportunity to speak to Del, if you had the chance to talk to him for 5 minutes, what would you say to him?
I wouldn't say thank you, because I said that to him when he was alive, which I'm grateful for. I think I'd probably just say, just watch. Because it's changing still. And I think it'll be heading in a direction he would really be happy with. Because his goal was always not improv to be funny. This is improv happens to be funny. I think we'll be seeing things that aren't funny, and it'll be just 2 hours of improvised plays. And that was really his ultimate goal. And I think he'll be happy with that. That's what I would tell him, I guess. Keep watching. Oh, actually, I would ask him where he is. Heaven, hell, what have you. I think that'd be interesting. Del's afterlife has got to be one of the most fascinating afterlives ever. If we create our own afterlives, that's probably the one I would want to rent space from, Del's. It's got to be cool, if nothing else. If only half the people in his afterlife were the people he told stories about, and not half of them are true, half of them are not, but if only half of them were in that afterlife, it's a great afterlife, because L. Ron Hubbard will be there, the Grateful Dead will be there, just weird people. Del always had a story about someone famous. He was the Forrest Gump of in reality. And my favorite was I met Harlan Ellison at some convention or something, and I told him I was doing something at the Improv Olympic, and Harlan Ellison turned to me and said, "You know Del?" I said, "Yes." And he just raved about Del Close like Del Close would rave about other people. And that was the first celebrity I had met who actually did that, and that was really fun. And I told Del, and Del did the opposite. Del went, he's a nice guy. And that was it. I was like, that's Harlan Ellison. It was really weird. But I always liked that.
Nice. Do you think that there's anything else that maybe I could or should have brought up, or anything else you would like to contribute to this?
Hey. Maybe the controversial parts of Del, but maybe you would want to speak to people directly affected. Well, like, was he racist? Was he sexist? He had a terrible reputation for being sexist.
He hated women, something like that.
He didn't hate them, as he had no respect for them. And again, it just goes back, Del had no respect for anyone. You had to prove yourself on stage, in class at least. In person, he was perfectly nice to you. If you were a store clerk, he was perfectly nice to you. Yeah, it's not like he came up and said, "I'd rather have a man ring up my cigarettes." He never didn't care about that. It was in class. Of course, most people know him from class. And think of the patience this guy had. He'd been teaching the same fucking thing for 40 years. Any teacher of any subject goes nuts after a while. I mean, Sharon only put up with it for almost 20 before she quit, and I still don't know how she did it. I don't know how Noah does it, and I don't know how Del did it. And you can only attribute it to how do those people raise retarded children? Del loved the children so much. He put up with all the drooling and the stupidity we all have. He liked it that much. It was always the hope that someone would surprise him in class.
I think that at the end of your segment, we're going to put, the day after this interview, Jason shouldn't quit improvisation.
And taught retarded children. He opened the Jason Chin Memorial for retarded children. Terrible quote.
I want to wish you the best in everything you're doing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Oh, my pleasure. Oh, hey, I don't know if you guys can use this or not, but I just found out I will be the official judge of the Del Close Scholarship for the Chicago Improv Fest. In that, when they announce it, you can send a 2,000-word paper to the CIF, and I will read them, and I will judge the best one, and they get a full scholarship to the show. They get to see all the shows and all the classes for free. And I think the title is Why Life is Like a Long Form, something like that. Originally it was like Why Life is Like a Herald, but my problem with that was these people coming to learn what the Herald is. It wouldn't make any fucking sense to them. I don't know who Herald is. So we're going to do Why Life is Like a Long Form, or Why Life Should Be Like a Long Form.
I think I'm also going to include that in when we start promoting the video itself.
Oh, good idea.
Also put it at the same time, don't forget to enter your submission.
Good idea, cool. You know who's coming? Dave Pasquesi is coming back to Chicago for a little bit. Yeah, he's doing a show with TJ in February here, which will be fucking mind-blowing. And ironic in that TJ never had Del, or had him for a very brief time.
I asked TJ about that. He liked to participate. He's like, I'd love to, but you know what? Del hated my stuff.
Yeah. Same with Brian Stack. And it's two of my favorite improvisers.
Brian, we're going to interview him, but he was just like, yeah, I didn't really have that much.
Yeah, I don't have much to say.
I said, yeah.
Awesome. Oh, I love the guy. I don't have much to say. I love Brian Stack. Genius.
At the end of the impressions, Brian Stack impressions. Awesome. Yeah, I'll be sure to. You wouldn't happen to have his contact information, would you? Pasquesi's?
No, TJ would, because he's doing a show. He just left. He's doing a show with. It's funny because Del did a two-man show with Dave Pasquesi, and now years later, TJ's doing a two-man show with Dave Pasquesi, which I love. Dave Pasquesi was the first person to teach Del's class after Del died. He wrapped up the last 4 weeks of the class and directed them in their 5B show.
Hey Jason.
Yeah.
To end it, would you want to? You had a pretty subtle Del impersonation. Would you want to give one a try?
Oh God, terrible. I guess the one I usually use is the one when he yelled at me for denying in a scene. It was I don't know if things have changed that much since I was dating, but when a young lady starts asking me to dance, I by God start dancing. That was the terrible Del. Brett Scott does the best Del so far. Of course, Nowhere too. That's it.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you guys. Hope you're having fun.
Oh, it's fun.
Who have you done so far? Khaki.
Khaki.
Thanks, man. Let's go.